So hey guys, Stephen Bowen here from Physique. Today I'm going to talk about some things we want to consider during our peak weeks. Whoo, man. Wow, it's been a bit. I keep saying I'm gonna get back on that YouTube grind, but life has been busy. 2020, what a fucking year. So, whatever, here we are. Let's talk about some peak week considerations and some things that I think will help us to really make sure that we get the best out of peak week, restoring ourselves to our best place where we can truly look our best, because that's what it's about, right? Peaking is about looking our fucking best. How do we do that? Well, if you follow us and me, my opinion is by treating ourselves like, I don't know, athletes? Treating ourselves like athletes. Ha! Yes! If you're an athlete who has to go perform, if you're a combat sport athlete, made weight, you have to go perform. What is going to be your goal? To rehydrate so that you can perform your best. If you're a football player and you're going out to play a game, what is your goal? It is to perform the best. Well, how do we do that? Do we do that by being sore and or hurt, or by being overtrained going into a game or a competition? No, it's not. The way that we do that is by making sure that we have done everything that we needed to do to prepare as best possible. Yep, absolutely. Not only physiologically, right? So not only with our training and our cardiovascular activity and those kinds of good things that are going to make sure that we can do that, but also mentally, football players watching film and tape, doing all these kinds of things. So if we are going to take that and we are going to cut that out and say, okay, physique competitions, how do we do that? Well, for a physique competitor, we want our muscle glycogen to be its fullest. Well, how do we do that? Well, we don't necessarily use it all up. So maybe we back off on our training a little bit. We don't go balls to the wall. So we maybe back things off in terms of our training. We're not going to failure. We're not doing a bunch of drop sets. Staying somewhere between, maybe it's 7.5 to 8 on an RPE scale. And we're getting a lot of good blood flow to the muscle for nutrient delivery. Okay? We're also not dehydrated. Whoa! Crazy. So not being dehydrated not only consists of not cutting water, but it also consists of not cutting sodium. So we need those things for blood volume. So if you want to get a pump on show day and you've had no water and you've had no sodium, well, guess what? Good fucking luck. It's going to be real hard without blood volume. The other thing that cutting sodium will do is it'll make you cramp on up. There's a reason these athletes, when they're doing sport, we'll say when they're sporting, sport ball, they're drinking things like Gatorade and things with like carbohydrates and electrolytes, because it helps us to have energy and to not cramp up and have a lot of issues with our muscle contractions. We don't necessarily want to cut sodium going into a show. If we see that we're having issues on show day, maybe a little bit of sodium will help us to get a pump. A little bit of extra water will help us to get a pump so that we can look jacked. Sorry, I know, I'm not jacked. Angle? Better? Worse? I don't know, fuck it. Anyways, so making sure that we're not cutting water and sodium. We can also slowly taper down cardio each day of the week. So maybe we're doing an hour a day, 50, 40, 30, 20, and day up, maybe we just have a little bit of running around so that we're active. It's a little bit of just not being on our butts. And that will also help us to look our best. Make sure that we don't have a lot of systemic inflammation going on, and that we're just nice and full, and our lines are as crisp as they can be, and all those other kinds of good, wonderful things. But what are some other things that we want to think about that are going to maybe be related to those that can help us with our preps and our peak week stuff? So first and foremost, where you're at during your peaking time. So for me, I peak everybody out 1 week into the show. Making sure that we're not doing things that are going to be new stressors or very hard stressors on the body. So some of that's going to be training, but it might be extracurricular activities. If we're outdoors in the heat during that peak week and we're not normally in the heat like that, well, that might not be the best idea, especially if we're paying a lot of attention to keeping water and sodium stable. Well, we're going to have to probably change those numbers for those days so that we don't dehydrate. And again, if we don't, and if we're kind of not aware of those things and we're not paying attention, that maybe can create some issues down the line. Now, if it's far enough out, it's absolutely fixable and something that you can handle and address. However, we absolutely don't want to be doing those things 2-3 days out, where we might not be able to do the right things to still pull that back in to really bring our best. So making sure that you're paying attention to your extracurricular activities, and making sure that we're not going overboard with those, putting ourselves in a place to be dehydrated or overly sore, or anything of the sort that's going to kind of put us off there. With that being said as well, first physique competition, how your skin looks also matters. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to the things that may affect that. So obviously making sure we're taking it easy enough to where, maybe we're not getting a lot of bruises from things that we're doing. So maybe exercises like deadlifts or some other things like that. We want to just be aware of that and be careful with how we're addressing that. We might not want to be doing those peak week anyways, but yeah, we want to be aware, okay? Anything that might discolor our skin. Sunburn also going to be a big part of that as well. Because of the fact that it can just make our tan uneven. So just like tan lines and very harsh tan lines can do that, and that's something that we want to be aware of going into a peaking time and going into a show, to try and soften any kind of tan lines as much as possible so that when the tan goes on, it's nice and even. Yeah. We also want to make sure that we're not doing anything like maybe spending too much time in the sun to where we're going to really harshen that up, or have a sunburn to where that might make the tanning process or some other things in terms of presentation a little bit more difficult to manage also. And then the last one, and might be one of the more important ones, it's our psychological health. So we talk a lot about the physiology. Yep, we sure do. But we need to also make sure we manage the psychology of the process. So we also want to make sure that during our peak week, we have a lot of positive self-talk. We're focusing on positive things. If we need to, we're, muting other competitors. We're not getting in our own head. We're making sure that we're paying attention to stress management techniques like diaphragmatic breathing, meditation, and those kind of things that are going to help us to manage that stress response, and going into it as relaxed and confident as possible. We want to make sure that we're also paying attention to our thought patterns as well. And that can be difficult because some of us are very type A and maybe a little bit more gung-ho about things. But it's very important that we go in nice and free of stress, at least as much as possible. What that's going to do is it's going to prevent any kind of cortisol dumps and stress response. What we can see is when people really stress themselves out, maybe we see that their abs were in really well and they're kind of washed out on show day. And we can see that the psychological response can in fact create a physical response with the body as well. So we don't want to forego paying attention to our thoughts and what's going on in there in this little crazy dome of ours as well. So I'll leave it there. That's it. That's all I got. Little peak week considerations. So remember that, guys, because 2020 is having shows again now. And we just want to make sure that we're paying attention to all of the important details.